Hi, welcome to Ellevate Louisiana's Cancer Advocacy Committee meeting. I'm Julie Stokes, founder and CEO of Ellevate. For today's discussion, we're joined by Dr. Steve Nelson and Dr. Lucio Miele to discuss progress on acquiring NCI designation for Louisiana. That's designation by the National Cancer Institute, which would just dramatically improve cancer delivery of cancer care here. It's a very exciting thing and something that we've been after for a long time. Dr. Steve Nelson is Chancellor of LSU Health Science Center in New Orleans, where he has led academic medicine, research, and healthcare advancement for 4 decades. A physician scientist with over 55 million of NIH funding and 250 plus publications, he has shaped medical education and research statewide. His leadership established the Lacat Center and advanced LSU Health Science Center toward NCI designation, where we are approaching today. Widely recognized for mentorship and compassionate care, Dr. Nelson embodies excellence in Louisiana's medical and academic community. Dr. Lucio Miele is an internationally recognized cancer researcher whose work has helped uncover how genes like Notch drive cancer growth and treatment resistance. Trained in Italy, Berlin, and at the NIH, he has led major research programs at Loyola, the University of Illinois, and the University of Mississippi. Now chair of genetics at LSU Health Science Center, New Orleans, Dr. Miele focuses on cancer genomics, precision medicine, and reducing health disparities. Thank you, Dr. Nelson and Dr. Miele, for joining us today. We're looking forward to hearing from both of you very much. Before I hand it over to you, though, I just want to say, as a cancer survivor and somebody that's been active in this space for a long time, how excited we are to have the two of you representing our state, having you working toward this designation and bringing together all of the interested parties in this, and just to let you know how precious it is to us and how meaningful. And so now I'll kick it over to you guys, who I know have a presentation.
So I'll start. Thank you for those kind words and that introduction. So my name is Steve Nelson. I'm the Chancellor of the Health Science Center here in New Orleans. I've been here for, as they pointed out, 40 years. I came as an assistant professor for Johns Hopkins many years ago. Came up through the ranks, was the dean of the medical school for 14 years, is now a chancellor for the past 4 years. So NCI designation, why is it important to the state? So it's estimated there are over 30,000 new cancer diagnoses each year in Louisiana, over 10,000 estimated deaths each year. We have some of the poorest outcomes in many different types of cancer, from breast cancer to colon cancer. And so probably there's nothing greater in terms that could have a positive impact on the health of Louisiana than to achieve NCI designation for this state. If you look at leading causes of death, cancer is number 2 behind cardiovascular disease. So this is something that we at LSU in New Orleans have been actively pursuing for many, many years. To me, it's probably as big a project as the Superdome, as building the Causeway. This will be transformational for this state. And why is that the case? Well, you think about it, somewhere between 6,000 to 8,000 patients each year leave Louisiana to obtain cancer care. Where do they tend to go? MD Anderson to our west, or Birmingham to our east. From my point of view, no one should have to leave this state to achieve and obtain the best cancer care available. So that's what we're after. So many years ago, I think it was in the 70s, the National Cancer Institute started these cancer center programs. The idea of these was that they would provide the absolute best research in cancer and provide the best care available in cancer. And so there are 73 of those across the nation. Most of them tend to be either in the East Coast or the West Coast. But here in our region, there isn't one in Arkansas, there isn't one in Mississippi, and there isn't one in Louisiana. We want to be the first of those 3 states to get that. We've been getting lots of different support, both from the governor, from the state legislature, from our federal partners to achieve this goal. People are now coming together for the first time, I think, in a long time to really get us to where we can actually get this cancer center. What would it actually mean to the people here? Well, it mean you could be diagnosed earlier. You wouldn't have to leave the state. And many of those 6 to 8,000 people that leave our state, most of our citizens are not able. They don't have the resources to do this. So they don't get the best of care. And so here you would get the latest treatments here at home in Louisiana. You wouldn't have to leave home. You wouldn't have to. And remember, if you go to cancer care to, say, MD Anderson, or you go to Birmingham, you have to move there. And maybe you have to move there and live there for months. And so you don't have the convenience or the support of your family and everything else. So it's a very stressful situation as well. And so they can resume and return to their daily lives sooner. And then also the overall cost of the care is less because we're not paying for them to go to out of state to someplace else for the care. We're keeping those resources here in our state. And so on the whole, so not only does it provide the best in care, but the other thing that a lot of people don't realize, it's really an economic engine for the state. So in terms of tax, and you get the best talent and the best doctors to come here. We can have pipeline programs in terms of people offer careers in cancer care. And companies will want to locate here, biotech companies. It'll actually energize this whole biomedical corridor, which people have talked about in New Orleans for so many years. This now becomes a reality, and new jobs will be created. So it's estimated, the sort of the conventional number is for every one NIH dollar you get, it generates about $3 downstream. But if you look at other cancer centers that have recently been acquired that status, sometimes the investment from multiple sources, that's both state, federal, and philanthropy, it's about $400 million to get to where we need to be. The economic impact downstream is somewhere on the order of $4 to $5 billion, okay, because of all the other industries that tend to come in. So this will really energize the whole state. And although we're starting at LSU in New Orleans, because the rules dictate that only one institution can apply, okay? And it's a research grant, so it has to be a research institution, can't be a hospital. So it's either LSU Health New Orleans, LSU Health Shreveport, or Tulane. And the NCI, and we recently had the interim director of NCI here in town, have all stated that because we're the flagship, we go east and west, north and south in Louisiana, we should be the designated applicant. And the other institutions have agreed with that. But the intent has always been that we will bring in other partners as well, because we don't expect people from Shreveport to travel to New Orleans for cancer care either. We want them to get the care at home. So we intend to build a network of all the existing institutions here that provide cancer care, to establish this network where you can stay in Louisiana and be assured that you get the best care possible.
I'm curious, and I'm sure you're going to cover this, but how is the eventual including more people under the umbrella envisioned? And I'm imagining it's something similar to the format or the way that LCRC is run, the Cancer Research Center.
So again, as I said, only one institution can apply. And the initial period of funding is usually somewhere around 4 to 5 years of funding for the initial. Then when you come in for your renewal, because you renew every 4 to 5 years, then you start bringing your partners in and you develop what's called a consortium. Now, what we would do, say, when we're successful in obtaining the initial grant, is we would start, when we're already starting, to work with our other partners. So we would work with Tulane, we would work with Oxnard, we would work with the other institutions north and south to show that we are collaborating together, we're doing research together, we're providing care together, we provide clinical trials together across the state to show that we have a working relationship. So as you mentioned, I'm one of the principal investigators in a grant called LeCats, which is a grant funded by the NIH as well, another agency of the NIH, which has now been in its third or fourth cycle in funding. And really what we did there was create a network of clinical trials across the state. So it would be like that. We will work together as a consortium and bring all these partners together over time. Now, to become a partner, you have to show that you're committed to this, that you're putting resources into this, and this is one of your prime sort of efforts in terms of what you're trying to provide care for. Does that sort of make sense?
It does.
Okay. And again, in a state like us, where we're not a wealthy state, for us to compete with Texas and Alabama and every place else, we have to bring all our resources together. And
Yeah.
again, I always say my competition is not Oxnard. I have an appointment at Oxnard. My competition is not Tulane. I have an appointment at Tulane. My competition, our competition is Texas, Alabama, and every place else. We need to work together if we're going to achieve that. And it's my commitment that that's exactly what we're going to do.
I agree, and
Absolutely.
I'm excited to see. I think once you get into that stage and you're including everybody and collaborating, I think we've got to get to a point where it's us against all the other states and not against each other.
Correct.
Absolutely. So, formally, NCI designation is called a P30 grant. It's a research grant. And there is an announcement that's called a notice of funding opportunity that describes exactly what needs to happen for somebody to be competitive for this grant. There are 6 essential characteristics that each cancer center needs to meet in order to be an applicant. And these include cancer focus, meaning everything has to revolve around research and care for cancer. A director that has sufficient stature as well as authority over resources, positions, and space to be able to organize these activities. Scientific programs. These programs are groups of investigators that work on similar aspects of cancer research. Shared resources. These are core facilities which are used by investigators that already have NCI grants, and I'll get to the numbers in a second, to facilitate their research. What the P30 grant actually funds is the infrastructure. So in order for
What was that word?
the infrastructure.
Infrastructure.
So in order for NCI to be willing to fund the infrastructure, one needs to show, number one, that we've already got it in place. They're not going to fund us to build it. And number two, that infrastructure has been used by NCI and NIH funded investigators who work on cancer and work together, because one of the metrics for review is intra and inter programmatic interactions. So one has to build a very tight team that integrates cancer research across disciplines and also vertically from basic research all the way to clinical and population research. Then you need a community engagement component, which goes, and this is one of the reasons why LSU is the logical first applicant, because you need to reach through your catchment area, which in our case includes the entire state, to provide health literacy education, community engagement, navigate people to things like cancer screening and early diagnosis, and also navigate people to clinical trials. Then you need a cancer research education and training program that starts from high school students and ends at junior faculties, that educates cancer investigators and physicians from your catchment area, and provides them with opportunities to learn how to become scientists, physician scientists, or physicians devoted to cancer research. Then you need to have a large and diverse group of clinical trials. So you need to have clinical trials from NCI, clinical trials from industry, clinical trials developed by your own investigators. These are called IITs, or investigator-initiated trials. And you need to have all 3 groups of clinical trials in order to be competitive. And you have to show that you enroll a minimum of 10% of your new cancer diagnosis cases into these clinical trials. That means you have to create, and we're well ahead of the game in that, you have to create an infrastructure that will manage clinical trials throughout your partner hospitals. Finally, the numbers, you need to have a certain number of funded investigators, both bench scientists, but also population scientists and clinical scientists that have enough grants to show that you have the ability to sustain your cancer research enterprise. The absolute minimum on paper is $10 million direct. Direct means minus the indirect or facilities costs in cancer relevant grants. In reality, the bar is more like between 20 and 30. The last center to receive designation had 29. We have, as of today, we have 19, and that doesn't count the grants that are being transferred in by 2 highly funded investigators that we have recruited over the last few weeks. Because NIH grants that are led by a particular investigator, when that investigator moves, are generally transferred with the investigator. This is why recruitment is critical to building a cancer center, and that's why this is such a competitive endeavor. In order to maintain NCI designation, you need to have and maintain a certain number of funded investigators. And so it becomes a little bit like football where everybody's a free agent. In order to hire a successful cancer investigator, you really do need to have resources, infrastructure. You need to put them in a situation where they can be successful. That is to get to level 1 of NCI designation. The following level is a comprehensive cancer center. And that is where it would make sense to go in as a consortium, but it cannot happen on first submission.
Okay. Okay. So
So
that next level is what we're saying might be 5 years-ish.
yeah,
And-
yes, but that means 5 years starts yesterday. So all of these things need to be prepared well ahead of time. So we have a very detailed strategic plan, a tracker that identifies individuals in cancer-centered leadership in the center that are responsible for each piece of what I just described to you: clinical research, translational research, basic research, scientific programs, shared resources, clinical trials office, cancer research training and education, and community engagement. And each of these people are responsible for developing their piece of the application. Then you write this massive application. Now, how these are reviewed is likely to change. Usually the process until now involved what's called a site visit, meaning a group of usually other cancer center directors who already had achieved designation would come, appointed by the NCI, to review your center. And you would not only write the application, but you would also present to them each component of the cancer center and have to answer questions point blank by this group, who would then create a report both on the site visit and actually review the written application. It appears that the site visit may be going away, or maybe not. We don't know yet. It's a positive in the sense that the reviewers get to actually see your structures. They see your laboratories. They see your hospitals. And if they have a question, you can answer right then and there. If you have to put this all in a written document, the written document is going to become even larger and more complex to prepare. And so you really start years ahead of time to write this application. This is what I wake up with every morning, and that's what I go to bed with every night. What have we done today that we can add to the application? That's how it works.
So the analogy I always make in terms of one of the points that Lucio made is that when you go, so you have to have a certain number of research grants in certain categories to apply. That's why it's a research grant. So we have to attract these research scientists to come, leave Duke, wherever it is they happen to be, Harvard, whatever, to come to Louisiana. So they're not coming to Louisiana unless we have something to offer them that is state of the art. So in New Orleans Biz magazine, I think it came out today, there's an article about what we've been doing in the Health Sciences Center. So 3 years ago, I started renovating 3 floors of research space in one of our buildings at a cost of $100 million. And so that'll be 200,000 square feet of the best research space in the state of Louisiana. The state was very generous and supportive over the years. They came up with $65 million, and we put in 35 million self-generated as well. And again, it's just like recruiting a quarterback. You know, you have to have great facilities or they're not coming. And we've made great success, as Lucio just said, in recruiting these funded investigators over the past several months, because this facility will be operational within about 2 months. And so we're putting all the pieces together to make sure that we have the infrastructure so that we can attract these researchers to come and keep the ones that we have to stay. Does that see what we're getting at is you have to have this or you're not going to be competitive.
Well, and that was part of my question, you know, what makes this effort different? You know, because we've really been seeking this, and hopefully we've been building, and it sounds like we have, building upon step by step, you know, over the years. I know back in 2018, when I had legislation to try to get more funding for LCRC at the time, well, we were broke as a state, so that didn't help at that point. But the main problem was this consortium, and that LCRC was a consortium.
Right.
So this space that you refer to is in the LSU Health Science Center, downtown New Orleans?
Yes, in one of our called the Medical Education Building. And again, the LCRC was a great concept when it
Yeah.
came. It took tobacco money and said we're going to work together and achieve NCI designation for Louisiana. Unfortunately, the model, which was a consortium model, which was something you could do at that time in history, is no longer viable. So you cannot apply as a consortium. You have to apply as one institution. And then when you renew the grant in 4 or 5 years, you can come in as a consortium. And that's our intent, is to, at that point and along the way, bring all our other partners in. Now, we still benefit from the LCRC because it gets about $10 million a year. Those research dollars go to Tulane researchers, LSU researchers, Xavier, and Oxnard. And what we want to do is just make sure that all of these 4 institutions are working together and collaborating so that when we come back and apply as a consortium, they can say, well, Dr. Nelson, Dr. Miele, seems like you've been working together in terms of scientific projects, clinical trials, symposia. And so that will build the consensus that we are working as a consortium. So we apply as individually, but this is always, always, always meant to be everyone will be a partner in this. It's just you have to bring people in a certain way. The analogy to me is if you have everybody's in one room, there's only one door to get out of this room, and somebody yells fire. If everybody tries to get out at the same time and through the door, nobody gets out. We just have to go along the rules. So I know people probably have concerns about that. Why is LSU first? Because this is the way it has to be if we want to achieve this. Now, you bring up something as well, which is very important. There's wide consensus now between the governor's office, the legislature, our hospital partners, that we are now on the right path. I alluded to the fact that, several weeks ago, we had the interim director of the Cancer Institute come down here, and I put on several events where, one, the different partners could hear, well, this is the way it has to be, it came from them. But also they then saw the broad support that there was from the different institutions and the hospitals and the researchers and the community and the business partners that we are now working together. So we're in this place now where we haven't been for the past 20 years. And I know, Julie, you were always a very outspoken person to get this going, and we've greatly appreciated that. But now things are coalescing to the point where we can really make progress on this. And we will get this done within 3 to 4 years at the latest.
Again,
so
I'm
exciting.
not a football expert because I grew up where they play football with their feet. But this is like a football game in the sense that you gain 3 yards, then everything stops. There's a commercial, and then the players decide what they're going to do next. Now we are moving closer to the end zone. And at that point, you really do have to have a game plan to score. And that's what the strategic plan is that I was referring to. And it needs to be, everybody needs to follow that.
Yeah. So we're feeling like, and I think you just said the 2 to 3 years probably for getting into the end zone with this.
Yeah. So you need, for example, you need 2 years worth of clinical trial data to show that you're enrolling that minimum 10% of your patients. Of course, to do that, you need to hire clinical trialists because not every doctor can enroll patients in a clinical trial. First of all, they need to have the protected time, which is always a complex issue when it comes to busy clinicians. And they need to be trained in that kind of thing. You don't just, and they need to be supported by a clinical trials office that takes care of contracts, regulatory, and all of that good stuff. So that's what we're doing right now. We just hired we already have a fairly wide-staffed clinical trials office, but we hired a medical director for this clinical trials office, who is a neuro-oncologist with tremendous experience in brain tumor clinical trials. We've hired an associate director for clinical research, who will join us early next year, and will also be the head of hem-onc in our Department of Medicine. They are hiring additional physicians that can put more patients on clinical trials. That's how we increase the number of patients on clinical trials. From my standpoint, I need to track their progress and make sure that we stay above the bar for a number of years, because there are tables in the application that describe, all right, how many grants have you gotten? How many patients have you enrolled? For how many years? What NCI is looking for is sustainability. They're making an investment in taxpayers' money. So what Dr. Christoph Tack, who's the director of the Office of Cancer Centers, explained to me when they came here. They said, look, the reason why we do it this way is that we want to make an investment that will last. It's very rare for cancer centers that become designated to lose their designation. A few of them have. They don't want to see that. So what they want to see is we start with one institution that has enough critical mass to sustain the effort. Then the consortium comes in as icing on the cake, but they want to make sure that if something happens and the consortium falls apart or whatever, they have somebody to fall back on, and they're going to keep the cancer center going.
Yeah.
Let me just say something about clinical trials, because we want to highlight this point a little bit, Lucio, is that so we already have done a lot of very innovative things in clinical trials. So, and Lucio can say a little bit more about that. One is the NCORE thing, but the other, and so we actually enroll more patients in certain trials for the NCI of some of the populations that need to be enrolled, and different people of color and everything else, than any other place in the country. So we do that incredibly well. The other thing that Augusto Ochoa has done, who's head of the Department of Oncology here in the med school, is something called the virtual nurse program, where we have a nurse that then communicates with different doctors across the state and provides them with resources so they can enroll trials in the middle of, with very little resources. So we're already doing a lot of very innovative things. The other thing I want to point out, which I sort of alluded to before, is the absolute grant itself isn't for a lot of money. It's only, how much money is it actually, Lucio, the grant itself?
It's $5 million.
Yeah.
Direct.
Right.
But what happens is when you have this grant, what happens is people now come to you and to the hospitals that are affiliated with that, and that creates a lot of revenue for the hospitals. So the overall, that's why MD Anderson, everybody wants these, because they also generate a lot of clinical revenue. But then what also happens is biotech companies want to be associated with this in terms of growing their enterprise as well. So all you have to look at is where these cancer centers are. You'll see cranes going up. So that's what I meant before, is that, we've talked a lot about this biomedical corridor down here in New Orleans between Tulane and Oxford and Xavier and LSU and everybody. And it's doing okay. It's in sort of, but it hasn't taken off. You get this NCI designated cancer center and it will explode. Because that's what happened everywhere this has occurred.
Right. One of the things that I've kind of learned about it too, and I just wanted to make sure, kind of get this in there, is that, it takes a look at the area where you are and the population health factors in that area, the risks, the risks in the population. Also, we have an enormous diversity, racial diversity here that I'm sure helps a lot. In terms of being able to offer those clinical trials. They really are looking for that rich, diverse population, right?
100%.
So oncology is going away from the idea that one size fits all. We're going to precision oncology, which means that every patient is really quite unique, not only genetically, but also from the standpoint of a number of other variables. It's actually interesting. It's going to come out soon. We have a paper in press where we looked at breast cancers among Louisiana women who self-identified as either African American or European American. And we looked at a number of things at how both the immune system in their tumors and gene expression varied with stage, with self-reported race, with obesity, and with all sorts of other things. One of the interesting surprises in that study was that only about half the people were genetically what they thought they were. So,
yeah. You mean
so
like their ancestry, like my dad's family always said that we were had a lot of Native American, and when I did tests, it was like, you don't have any Native American.
So, but that matters because that affects what genes you may be able to target in a cancer. And you really have to look at each individual. You cannot group people by saying, oh, yeah, you probably are this or that. That's one of the messages of this paper. It could only have been done in Louisiana because our population, as you say, is so diverse. Yeah. But, if you look at how 7 or 8 different ancestries distribute among these patients, it's a continuous curve.
Yeah. Well, and I so greatly appreciate when I read this in your bio, precision medicine. And I actually, when we got precision medicine enacted, we worked with Senator Kirk Talbot and got precision medicine enacted. And then me and Kirk Talbot worked for 3 or 4 years to get biomarker testing, so that you could test for the markers that would guide the precision medicine. So this is just a field of, cancer treatment that I am personally so excited about, because you don't have to bathe your body in a flood of poison or chemotherapy, to solve your cancer. And every year there's so many more cures from precision medicine, right?
Right.
That's right. And that's all. So this is where the synergy between the laboratory science and the clinical science happens. Like, we now have a phase 1 unit. So a phase 1 unit is where you do the very earliest clinical trials, first in human, when a new agent comes out. All of the new agents that are coming out are directed against a specific biomarker. There is no chemotherapy among the trials that we're opening. In fact, we made a video with one of these patients that participated in a study of a monoclonal antibody directed against a very specific biomarker called Claudin 18.2. This patient had a very, very severe esophageal cancer. In all honesty, he was pretty close to hospice. He had a complete response. But this is because the drug was given to him because his cancer expressed that particular biomarker. we're not trying medications blindly anymore.
Right.
We're only accepting patients that have the right biomarker profile. And so we made a nice video where we interviewed this patient who is a wonderful human being, extremely articulate, and who described what it felt like to go from being unable to eat to gaining 30 pounds and being back on his farm. So this is what science does.
But the other thing I want to point out, though, in addition to these latest, sort of the latest and best therapies, there's a lot of basic work that needs to be done in terms of how we take care of patients here in Louisiana. I'll give you this one fact. So we rank in the top 25% or so of our ability to sort of screen people for breast cancer. So we do screening incredibly well, top 25% in the country. We're in the bottom 25% for survival, right? So there's a disconnect for getting screened and getting access to care. And whether that's just in terms of whether or not they don't know how to navigate the system or that care isn't available to them, there's some just basic work that we need to do to help those people as well. And there's similar data for colon cancer as well. So while we want to do the latest and the best and what's ever available, there's a lot of fundamental things we need to do in terms of how we take care of cancer patients here in Louisiana. The other thing I just want to mention, another aspect of how this can help the state and the city, is when I came here from Hopkins in the 80s and even before that, Louisiana, especially, New Orleans used to be a place for medical tourism. In other words, people from Central and South America came to New Orleans to get the latest and best treatment. They don't come here anymore now. Where they go? They go to Miami and other places. So again, people will always come, Mississippi, wherever it happens to be, to where they perceive they're going to get the best care in cancer. And that's why this is so important, not only to the individual patient that we take care of, but to the overall benefit of Louisiana. So there's an economic benefit as well that once you get that can then fuel and fund other things that need to be done.
And that's been behind my passion for cancer advocacy since I started, is just that if we're going to have this high of an incidence, we should be better at it. We
Correct.
should be getting, and like you said, screening, we're okay. Probably not for every kind of cancer screening, but we're good for
Those are
breast.
just two examples, right?
Yeah. But, getting that follow-up treatment, getting those diagnostic then scans that you need to get, so many levels after that we need to be better at making sure that insurance covers it. I see that one of our committee chairs, Terry Burkhoff, who just retired from Tackle, taking aim at cancer in Louisiana, has a question.
Thank you, Julie. I think I'm finally off of mute. Thank you, Dr. Nelson. I never had the opportunity to meet you, although I did work at LSU in the Health Science Department under Dr. Donna Williams. But it's good to see you again, Dr. Miele. And, while I had a working knowledge of this NCI designations, this was such a comprehensive overview, and I learned so many things. As Julie said, I had worked with TACO, and I'm very familiar with the Gulf South clinical trials. Is that the same thing as NCORE? Because I was curious as to what role that has played in adding to the NCI designation.
So yes, it is the same thing. The
Okay.
Gulf South Clinical Trial Network and the NCORE. And yes, it plays a very important role, not only from a clinical trial standpoint, but also from a COE, from a community engagement standpoint, because navigating patients who would not otherwise have access to clinical trials is part of the mission of a designated cancer center.
The second question I had is, we obviously know, or most of us know, the importance of clinical trials. And that was so fascinating, that last study you talked about, and the gentleman who had like almost a complete recovery when he was almost at hospice. What is the plan to have a comprehensive clinical trials database in Louisiana? Or is this the role the virtual nurse is going to play? Because it's one thing to have those clinical trials, and if you're going to establish this network, how, how does everyone know what clinical trials are available?
So it's a two-part response. First of all, as you know, every clinical trial gets an NCT number, a national clinical trial number, and they're searchable. What we need to do is place on our website all of the trials that are open. You can search by distance. You can go on clinicaltrials.gov, which is an NCI website, and find out what trials are open within your vicinity. But we need to make it easier for our prospective patients to find that information, and it'll be on the Cancer Center's website. In terms of a statewide network, we already have one, and it's based on the NCORP. Now, what the NCORP does right now, it does NCI studies, and these are usually late phase or prevention or cancer care optimization studies. But we can leverage that network to also have more complex studies later on. And again, what kind of trial you can do at a location depends on the what the location can do in terms of, say, you wouldn't be doing a phase 1 clinical trial in a rural hospital because you need to do pharmacokinetics, blood draws, you need a research pharmacist and all that stuff. However, you can very well do a phase 2 and phase 3 trial at these places, especially with the help of the virtual research nurse, which is a truly innovative approach that comes from LSU and was commended by the NCI.
The third question, and my last one, is what role do you see this committee playing in this NUL obtaining NCI designation, if any? I mean, is there an advocacy? So what kind of role do you see that we can play?
We'd love to have.
Every cancer center needs a community advisory board. And by community, we mean members of the community who have a voice. And we will be establishing one or more than one, because there may be one for community engagement, one for clinical research, and one for cancer training and cancer research training and education. So we are going to need, and we do need, community input in everything we do. The community tells us what their needs are. The community can be our voice, and we can provide, to the extent that we can, the most accurate information available to answer community questions. But it's a dialogue. This cannot be built in a vacuum.
Yeah.
So what Lucio's pointing out is you need to have that dialogue in terms of what you're doing. But to me, in a more fundamental level, I need as many people as possible to talk to the legislature, because pragmatically, we need somewhere between $100 to $200 million to get to where we are.
This
So,
year or
yeah.
over the next?
We'd like 100 million at least next year, and I've already spoke to the governor's office about that. So to get to where we need to be, it's about $400 million. We put up 50 million so far. LCMC's put up 50 million. I'm trying to get about another 100, 200 million from the state, 100 1 year, 50 for the next 2. Because again, as I said earlier, the only way we're going to get this done is federal, state, and philanthropy. We're also reaching out to those. So the more people that speak about how important this is to the legislature and everybody else will create the momentum to get us to where we need to be.
Well, I can tell you beyond a doubt that if I know when you're going up there, I will sit there with you. I will do whatever, it takes to talk to the legislature and talk behind the scenes to people and try to do everything in our power to help.
Well, we appreciate it. No, everybody, whenever I've Senator Kennedy, Senator Cassidy, Phil DeVilliers, I've spoken to all these people. Everybody's very supportive, but you need that momentum to say, okay, we love this, and we're going to put money behind it to get to where you need to be. So anything that you can do when you speak to the legislature would be very, very helpful.
Love to. I think Dr. Barnes-Teamer had a question.
Yeah, I was going to ask what role NIH All of Us research program is playing in getting the word out in our community. I've actually been working with the Delta Research Education Foundation for a couple of years, but not focused as much in the state of Louisiana, but in other states. So how can we kind of collaborate, or are we already collaborating around the NIH All of Us research?
So that's a fantastic question for me because I am the Louisiana PI for all of us. So I've enrolled about 5,000 Louisianans in all of us. And now we're running Nutrition for Precision Health. We have done quite a few town hall meetings focused on all of us. But now what we can do is expand that conversation. I mean, there are people already using the All of Us data set for cancer research, and some of whom I mentored. Were almost ready to hit the 1 million participants, and Louisiana's played a big role in this. You know, there is a Southern All of Us network, which started out with 11 institutions. Due to the sunsetting of the 21st Century Cures Act, there are now 2, UAB and us, and LSU. So we've had to pick up a lot of slack, and I'm very fortunate to have a fantastic team who work for me, and they've gone all over the state, enrolling participants in all of us. That is a great point, and we're well equipped for making that partnership work towards NCI designation.
So, I mean, 100 million to 200 million is a lot for this legislature, but you've been getting some pretty good feelings from upper leadership in the governor's office, huh?
Yes.
That's very exciting. I'm so excited because
They
I
didn't
remember
throw me out of their office.
what?
They didn't throw me out of their office.
That's exciting. Back in 2018, I think our ask was 8 million to get a good director for the Cancer Research Center. And we were so broke back then. So it's nice that we've got, you know, at least more resources to be able to move us to the next level. You know, that's one of the things that, you know, we don't like to spend a lot of money in Louisiana. And that's, you know, we're trying to be a good steward of everybody's resources, but certainly this is the kind of thing that we want to invest in our people's health and economic development, like you said.
So let me give you a practical example, because of course, since I've been recruiting a lot, I'm writing letters of offer. We are hiring a very senior cell therapy, CAR T bone marrow transplantation person from the Mayo Clinic. That one person cost me $10 million. So that's
over several years.
Okay, good. Because I was like, oh, I didn't know they did that well.
No. Over 4 years.
Reserve that for coaches of football teams, right?
Correct. Let's put things in perspective here, right?
Yeah. But that includes it's not his salary. It's what he needs from the standpoint of infrastructure, his staff, all of these things. All of these people will be coming to Louisiana and pay taxes here instead of Minnesota or Arizona. So, you know, in the Cancer Center world, unfortunately, you get what you pay for.
And again, every place where this has been done, it's an economic boom. So again, one of the things this governor is really focused on, is so is the head of LED, you know, Bourgeois, is ROI and everything. And even if you just look at it from that perspective, not even doing the right thing for the population, but just in terms of that, this is an economic engine.
Right. Well, I certainly do feel an optimism around this right now that's just very exciting. I can't say how happy I am to see that the state is showing interest in it, that we've got leadership in place with you guys and others as well, that it has the ability to bring this to fruition. And, you know, that people are kind of working on the same team. It's a very exciting time. And it's a very exciting time in cancer care anyway, just seeing the new improvements and everything. But, you know, Dr. Nelson, like you mentioned, until we can get people getting dependable care, you can't claim all these huge victories when you have people needlessly dying. In reality, that's what it is. And we just did another one of these for our health committee about the cost of healthcare. And it is such a complicated thing because some of these drugs and these new biologics that use DNA can just do so much to cure people, like your esophageal patient, and they cost money. So it's just such a complicated world out here in healthcare delivery, and I'm just so excited to see something looks like it's really going right with you guys working on this project. Thank you, Dr. Nelson, Dr. Miele. Thank you so much for being here with us today and talking about this really, truly transformational project. Thank you for your work, commitment to improving cancer care in our state. And, to everyone listening, thank you for joining us and being part of this discussion. And we hope you have a great rest of your day. And we certainly wish our state great success in this new endeavor. So
Thank you all for the opportunity.
Thank you. It's been a true pleasure.
If you're interested in these types of policy talks, check us out on Ellevate Louisiana's website, where you can learn more about our events, our policy committees, advocacy efforts, and how to join. That website is ellevatela.org, ELLEVATELA.org. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it.